my number three is a movie called A Face in the Crowd from 1957, directed by Alex, starring Andy Griffith, Patricia Neal, Anthony Francois. I'm butchering that name probably. But quick logline from IMDb. A female radio reporter turns a folk singer drifter into a powerful media star. So I put this movie on my list because for me, this movie is sort of the fear of greed and fame and what that can do to us, but also really the how the system feeds on it, the whole obvious Trump connection is very much real, but I think to me this is really more about the system at large, like
Hmm.
how somehow somebody has decided what the success metrics are, and then everybody is sort of a slave to it. Like in this context, the success metrics are ratings essentially, and everybody is sort of a slave to that in some way or the other. It's a tale of honestly very lonely and mostly selfish people. But I think what's
Right.
great about the movie is that you see the humanity of all these people, because that's true about humans too, all of us. Like we are greedy, lonely, selfish at some level or the other, but we
Hmm.
are still very much human. And I think the movie does an amazing job of sort of playing with your own sympathies, because they shift from person to person, because at any given point somebody is taking advantage of somebody else in order to sort of get that feeling that they are succeeding per those success metrics of that system. But then, of course, the system eventually spits you out, and you're sort of back at the same place where you started. In many ways, this movie made me think of Del Toro's last film that you had on your list, Nightmare Alley. In a
Yeah.
way that
Yeah.
you're sort of back at the same stage. All these people end up over there. So yeah, this fear for me has really always been there. I remember even as a much younger person when 9/11 was happening, and like terrorism was sort of so rampant and such, and having conversations with my parents and other friends about sort of what is going to happen to us as a society, as a
Hmm.
world, and are we all just going to succumb to you know these systemic forces, and that's just all going to be how it all ends up. To, of course, Trump times, where all this was very real, literally to the point of ratings and his obsession with ratings, and it sort
Right.
of became like a very literal manifestation of it. But I think to me, this thread has always been there, at least for me, and it's been there in at every sort of level. You can pick any industry, you can pick any company that you might be a part of, you can look at the country level or at the global level or the climate change level, whatever you want to look at it. It's the same principles of sort of how these systems are built on these weird success metrics, and everybody is sort of a slave to it. And yeah, some people are worse than others, but really everybody is in it in some form or the other. And I think that fear really, to me, kind of comes down to the fear of not being able to do much about it
Hmm.
either.
Hmm.
What is the way out? You can sort of in your own way think about, okay, I'm going to live this way, I'm going to make these choices, but you're also part of the system, you can't stand outside of it really either. So I think there's a little bit of that fear for me of sort of helplessness as well, or just ignorance, if you
Hmm.
will, and sort of just walking along. So yeah, that's why this movie's on the list. As the movie, like this is such a nail biter. I mean, I know you mentioned that we're not really talking about movies that have jump scares and such, but
Right.
the first time I watched this movie, I sort of felt like I was watching a horror film.
Mm.
That
Hmm.
first moment when what's his name, Buddy or Bud? What's his name? Lonesome Road. Sorry, not Buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought of Buddy. When Lonesome Road, like the first time, like watches himself in the camera
Mm.
and seeing what impact that is having, and there's just a look in his eyes. There's nothing more horrific to me when somebody sort of realizes that, and then what's going to come thereafter. So I mean, on that note, just brilliant performances, such a great narrative structure. The storytelling is so incredible. The score,
Hmm.
everybody just nails it. And yes, it's about all these themes, but it's also actually quite entertaining, if I could say that. Like, this
Yeah.
is not a movie that's like hitting you over the head. I mean, I guess it is at times, but it's done in such a way, and I think the credit goes to the performances and just the screenplay, really, that it's still a very entertaining watch. Like, yeah, it makes you think. It's it provokes you, but it's still entertaining. So yeah, that's Facing the Crowd at number three.
Yeah, no, this is a film that I've wanted to watch for a long, long time. I just never got around to it.
Mm,
And I everything that I heard about it in terms of its status as a masterpiece in film was all true. Like I really, really like this movie, and I definitely connected with it on a lot of the same levels that you were just talking about in terms of the the it's the system that enables someone like Lonesome Rose in this film to rise to the level that he is, and then have control. I'll say it over people, or at least of important voice over this
mhm.
swath of the country. And what's so fascinating about this movie, I think, and Andy Griffith's performance, is that you don't is his whole you can't really tell, like, is this whole story a lie or not? Like, what is
Right.
true about what he's saying about this small town that he came from? He keeps referencing he's from this small town, even though does it even exist? What is really his background? What is really his motives too? Which is, I think, is what this movie does so well. Like, it's not saying, oh, he's in this to try to become, the president so he can take over. It's like you don't really know what he's doing other than just he craves attention, and it
Hmm.
almost feels like he keeps making his decisions in this film on what's going to give him, the biggest audience, because he just wants that attention. And actually, you mentioned this at the beginning of your analysis here, and I actually didn't think about it until you said this, but you said, oh, about some lonely person. I mean, his name is Lonesome, for God's sakes. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's why they call him that. Like, he's this guy who is very, very empty. So he's
Hmm.
created this persona for himself just to get attention and get fame, and then, yes, money too, obviously. But I think it's not really the fame I'm sorry, the money that he really craves. It's like he's trying to fill some void inside of him
Hmm.
with this attention from other people. And yeah, the powers that be are using him then. Like, he gets exploited by the system and those in charge to then, he's the end of the film, like he's giving advice to a political candidate who
Hmm.
clearly is, set up as someone who has very bad, like, sort of capitalist conservative ideas, who's not really helping the people, but he's trying to use this Lonesome, who has a great connection to the masses of the poor, and thinking that they can control them, right? And even though they don't agree with the policies of who this candidate is, like, oh, you just get
Right.
Lonesome to say he's good, and then boom. So it's not really like Lonesome even has like a political agenda. It's just he desperately wants to have some kind of connection. And the sad thing is, in a way, is that his empty pursuit of fame is pushing the people away that actually are, could be important to him, like the
Yeah.
woman, I can't remember her name, who's in love with him throughout the film, but
Yeah.
she pushes her, or he pushes her so far away by making choices, marrying somebody else, because that's what he thinks will give him
Gosh.
better
Yeah.
story, right? So yeah, which why the ending I actually felt was very horrifying in a way. It's like he's alone and screaming out for
And
some
crazy,
and
probably.
crazy, yeah, because he has nobody, and that's what the
Yeah.
success has gotten
Yeah.
him. So I think, the movie is, especially when it was made, and just the fact that you can watch this today and it still
Yeah.
feels just as biting and critical of the system, and making a lot of allusions to Trump and other. There's a bunch of media figures you could also talk about in the same light, as similar to like Lonesome Rhodes. But yeah, it's like, I think just that's the testament of this film, that it can stand
Yeah.
up and still be so relevant. I mean, I guess it's also scary because things haven't changed, right?
It's scary, but in some ways, it also sort of, I don't know, in a weird way, I've watched it a few times now. It sort of also calmed me down, that I think
Mm,
we as a society, we have this thing that whenever something like this is happening, we sort of act as if it's happening for the very first time.
true.
And, that, oh, what have we done? Or what has this person done? Versus it's actually not about one person. Like,
Hmm.
this is Taylor's all his times. It's been going on for a long time, and you can be scared about it, but I think there's some catharsis as well, that this is just the nature of the beast in some ways. Like, isn't the isn't life kind of a cyclical system as well in some ways, you know? So
True. Yeah, true. Though I think about it as the beast isn't necessarily like humanity or human nature. It is an economic system that is relatively new, honestly. I mean, modern capitalism's really only been around for 150, 200 years. And I think that is what we're trapped in today and what this movie is showing. And my hope that I have is that, look, this is something that was created by man and it can be dismantled and changed by man too at some point, because we are all caught up in it. But it's not something that is, going to be with us forever, because it wasn't with us forever. And if it wasn't there all the time, then that means at some point it's going to go away. But I was really impressed with this film all around. It reminded me of another film that is around the same time, Ace in the Hole. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a Billy Wilder film. Very similar about the media and how, again, profit motive and all this stuff. But no, I think this also speaks to a lot of my fears too. So I was glad to finally see it. It's something I'd wanted to see for a very, very long time. Was totally blown away by it. If anyone listening has not seen this film, definitely watch it. Even though, I think it scared me in the same way that you were talking about, just the system being out of control.
Yeah.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.